Hi, my name is Tom Albright. I live in Allentown, and I pastor a church, an inner city church affiliated with an Anabaptist or Mennonite tradition. I have another hat that I wear. I also connect with the education piece. I'm a career counselor, and I develop job placements for students with individual education plans here in Bethlehem. So yesterday, the educational piece, three of those were my bosses up here yesterday. I enjoy wearing multiple hats. Ripple is the name of our church. Ripple is a symbol for us in many ways that I think you'll see it reflected. And this is really, I think, what I'm trying to share with you will be sort of a case study. Because I don't consider myself to be an expert on this. I consider myself to be a person who is experimenting with including restorative practices as a foundation of forming a church. You say, well, how did that happen? Well, it seems like, that's how life is. You don't know exactly how things happen, but about 5 years ago, there was this confluence of, I was leaving pastoring a traditional church. I had found the IIRP while walking down the street in Bethlehem and picked up a brochure and said, wow, this sounds really cool. And I started taking classes in the IIRP. And at that point, my wife and I, our kids were leaving home. And we were experiencing that we wanted to do something different. And this something different came from some people in the congregation who spoke and said, why are so many of the traditional churches leaving the center cities and moving out, into the suburbs? And that had been happening for years. But we took that as a challenge and started meeting with a small group at 9th and Linden Street, right in the center of the city of Allentown, with some people. Some of the first people who came were people without homes. And these people said, after one of the first times that we had gathered, they said, would you do a pastoral visit, a home visit? And I said, well, of course I will. And he said, how about under a bridge? And I said, of course I will. And the next day I was down under a bridge, and our church sort of began from that point. The man who came, I call him our evangelist, because when he says, what do you want to know about Ripple? When people ask about what is Ripple, he says, you've just got to come and see. And I'm hoping that we can come and see just a little bit as you get to experience some of these slides. The church today is changing. Just like the educational system, justice systems, our neighborhood, the church is changing culturally, financially. We're looking at what does it mean to be church in the 21st century. And we truly did begin this group of Ripple as a restorative practice church. We said we want to begin with a much flatter leadership, not a hierarchical leadership, because it seems like the church still does have a lot of hierarchy. So when people ask, what's my role in the church as a pastor, and we at this point have 4 or 5 pastors. We've had people that say, I want to be a part of what's happening here. So we've had some young seminarians come out and join our team. We've had a retired pastor come. And we find that we are not the judge, we are not the expert, and we sure hope we're not the Messiah. We are the shepherd. We do have a priestly role. People do come because they want the rituals of life. And we also we are fellow journeyers is probably the main thing. We see ripples as circles of shalom. The word shalom is such a rich word, meaning much more than peace, but wholeness and restoration. And so we look at what we do in the community as that. We are not building-based. We rent space. We're outgrowing our current space at this point. We're looking for new space. Because what we see is that the church needs to be incarnational. By that we mean living in and among the people. So we left our home in the suburbs, and people said, "What? You're crazy. Why are you leaving this home up that you have nice country house?" We said, we want to be with the people. And so the people in the congregation know where we live. We get a lot of knocks on our doors, and we appreciate that. And sometimes we don't answer the door, but most of the time we are there because we are part of each other. What we realize is that what the traditional church often measures success by is, I call it the B&B, butts and budgets. how many people are coming and how much money is coming in. But in a restorative church, we measure by the R&R, not rest and relaxation, but relationships and ripples. How are the relationships forming, and how is that spreading out into the community? We realize that one of the things that we need to do is that we do things with people. And very quickly, we realized that this church is the church of the people. And so my wife and I did start, this is a food pantry that the group decided they wanted to form in the community. Originally, we just gathered up as much food as we could give and gave it out. If you ask about our church budget, we have what we have for the month, and we try to give it out by the end of the month because we feel that that's the flow that we want to have. Everything goes immediately to the community. But last night, it was pretty exciting. The city of Allentown, their Human Relations Commission, picks a few people in the city and the work that they're doing to recognize. And last night they recognized Ripple, because not the Ripple pastoral leadership. They recognized the Ripple leadership at the food pantry because it's so diverse. We have African Americans, we have people of many different Hispanic cultures, we have people that are of European culture, and this group of 6 to 8 people works together to run a food pantry that serves almost 300 people. And I was really excited and proud of this group last night as they received the award, because we need each other. We really believe that. We don't just say it. We really need each other. We realize that life in the city, the life that many of us live in the city, is not an easy life. These people are dealing with issues of poverty, of addiction, of limited access to some things, some basic human needs in a lot of situations. But when we come together, we're working together to see what can happen. And we do that in circles. And you're probably wondering, how does a church operate in circles? We've grown, probably like a lot of churches. On an average Sunday, our church is probably about 80 to 100 people. But if everyone came, we couldn't fit everyone in, because people come and go, and there's a lot of flow, and there's probably 200 or 300 people who have come to be a part of Ripple. But we've divided the church up, and as we've grown, we've said we don't want to lose that relationship piece. We don't want to lose the circle. So this is called Church of the Sidewalk, and that's one of our favorite places. We have a church. People used to hang out on the steps. The church doors are one of the hardest doors, I believe, for many people to get through. And people would just hang out. We said, why don't we have a pastor out there? Why don't we have that be a church? So we have we meet out there every week. And a group of people, some bring their dogs, some are smoking, some are, it's real life, and it's Church of the Sidewalk. And this is what's happening, real relationships and real communities forming. Upstairs in the sanctuary, they've taken out the pews, and so we call it Church of the Circle. And we just gather with hands-on worship experiences. Down in the fellowship hall, it looks a lot like this with tables set up, and we call that Church of the Tables. And we I might have a short message, but the focus isn't on me up front. The focus is on what happens around those tables. And very quickly we move into the table, and we often have a meal together. So I have to tell you that I was beginning to feel burned out on church, and I was beginning to wonder, what am I doing here? By connecting restorative practices to this model of church, I have been having fun. I look forward to Sundays because I have made friends. I have learned so much, and it's a whole different way of living, worshiping, and caring in the city. And I am excited to see what's happening. These people that come really have developed such a level of trust in each other, and we are finding community. We are finding places of restoration. And one of the things that's happened in the church has, as Mark and others were saying, the church has often been a place where a lot of harm has been done. And so we are starting to look at ways to be restorative outside of our church walls, because although people come in, we want to go out. So one of the suggestions was there's a lot of high school kids that go by our place. And when I first came into the city, I was a little scared. There was a shooting in front of my house. I came home from work one day and there was an outline. They didn't know if the man was going to live. He was shot out in front with some gang violence right in front of my house. And we said, what happens is people go into their homes, and we're looking at how can we bring community. So we're forming a 501c3 called Ripple Community Inc. We're working, and Ted and others have helped us. All of our pastors and workers are trained in restorative practices. And one of the ways that we decided to reach out into the community was we are, all the students would stream by our place, Valentine's Day, we hand out chocolate candies. At the end of school, we handed out freeze pops. At different times, we're just trying to connect with people and say to the kids, you know what, you're valued, you're wanted in this community, and there's safe places and safe people. And that's just a small example. I wish I could share more, but like Tony says, my friend, he says, come and see.